Ladies and gentlemen of the rock and roll, punk, prog, hardcore, thrash, and heavy metal community, my name is Jason Evans, and this is the Great Metal Standoff, the podcast that pits music's greatest albums in track-by-track combat. 'Tis the season to be jolly, but with a year like 2020, it's going to feel a bit better, letting out our pent-up frustrations at the awful events that we've had to endure this year. So to keep it healthy, let's find a scapegoat, shall we? Yeah, let's see. I know. Nickelback, Silver Side Up, and Creed, Human Clay. Rock and roll's biggest laughingstock. That'll make a good scapegoat. But wait, we're in for a shock. I'm going to be joined by Mosh Pit's Jacob and Ben. And guess what? Jacob has made it known that he once went through a Nickelback phase. And Ben, unironically, unashamedly, and very passionately, is a massive fan of both Nickelback and Creed. So what I thought was going to be a battle where we'd pit two very bad albums against each other and tear them apart, I was finding myself at moments digging some tunes by bands that, while I don't outright hate, find either really indifferent or unable to take seriously. So enough dilly-dallying, let's be open-minded about Silver Side Up and Human Clay. Here's how this battle's gonna work. Every album battle will be contested in track-by-track format by our podcast panel. Each individual panelist will select a winner of each pairing. The winning track receives a point to that individual's tally score. Tracks on albums that go uncontested can receive a tally point if a panelist awards it a gold star, which will come into play. Human Clay outweighs Nickelback today. Once the battle is over, the album with the highest tally score will receive 1 grand point for that album. If a panelist's tally score results in a draw, both albums will receive a half grand point each. And finally, most importantly, the album with the most grand points will be declared the winner. Okay, and now we shall all collectively vent our frustrations by taking it out on Silver Side Up by Nickelback and Human Clay by Creed. Let's go and see what Jacob and Ben can do to help convince me otherwise. Roll the audio. Holiday season, let's farewell 2020 with the exact kind of content that it deserves. Nickelback and Creed. Jacob and Ben, welcome to the standoff.
Hey, thanks so much, Jason. I find it really funny. Last time I was on the standoff, we were talking about two progressive rock metal masterpieces, and this time we're talking about two of the most famous mainstream rock albums of perhaps the last 25 years. So I'm excited to chat about it.
For all the right reasons or for all the wrong reasons, you say, Ben?
Well, I mean, that's the question, isn't it? But I think you'll find that I'm quite enthusiastic when it comes to both these artists, which I'm guessing when you put this idea together, you didn't think you'd find anyone that loved both these records.
I was so surprised. I've warned the listeners, Ben. I have warned them.
Perfect.
Jacob, where do you stand?
Oh boy. I'll be real. I think I said once upon a time on the radio show that I had a Nickelback phase. And look, going back through these, I am wondering what I was thinking. So this will be an interesting one, although there are admittedly quite a few sleeper hits within these. So,
where did the Nickelback phase begin, Jacob?
That is a very good question. I think it was just me getting back into music and picking up like my dad's old CDs, and somehow I picked up a mixture of Foo Fighters with Wasting Light, and I think it was All the Right Things with Nickelback, and kind of somewhere there caught both of them and thought, oh, these two are the same quality.
It's definitely worth mentioning as well that if we were to compare two different albums, there's a fair chance that some people would not be familiar with any songs on either record, but almost every person in the world would know a couple of hit lead singles off both these records, both incredibly famous albums.
Definitely.
That I can attest. That is very, very, very true. Jacob, you've raised a bit more of a larger point here. How do you fall out of music that you need to get back into it?
I don't know. I think just as a kid, I focused on like other stuff.
Oh,
and then,
okay.
I rediscovered music and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
That makes a bit more sense then. Ben, honestly, it blew our minds when you joined Mosh Pit and you announced that you're a massive fan of these guys. It's good to know because, in fairness, Nickelback and Creed do have good songs. They truly do. There are a couple on both of these albums, Silver Side Up and Human Clay. But what makes you such an enthusiastic fan to dig deeper, Ben?
It all began when I went to a local op shop, and I know there's a joke in there, and found Creed's Human Clay. And honestly, it was the best I ever spent. But funnily enough, the first time I ever heard the record, I actually couldn't differentiate any of the songs. I thought it all kind of just ran together and sounded like the same thing. But it was this incredible light melody. And I think Mark Tremonti's very underrated in this. He does this a lot with Alter Bridge as well. And that was the thing that kept drawing me back. And I also think Scott Stapp did an excellent job putting over some really nice, almost angelic-like vocal flow over some of these compositions. So I think definitely that. And also just the massive production. And also the fact that these are quite like famous songs. I don't know. There's always something about that with me. When something's a part of rock history, I do like to definitely dive into it a little bit more. And as for Nickelback, I think growing up, just absolutely love those hits on the radio and just good hooks, fun songs, not overly serious. And I do have to say both albums have such big production. I think they both sound sonically quite nice. The guitars sound rough, live energy in the room. It's a lot of fun stuff. So look forward to diving into both of them with you guys.
We've spoken fairly positively about these two albums here, but what do you reckon makes them so hated, objectively?
I think for a lot of people, and especially the Creed one, maybe the music's a little bit too derivative. They're trying to perhaps kind of nod to earlier grunge with bands such as Pearl Jam is obviously the most common
Scott
comparison.
Stapp does sound like an Eddie Vedder ripoff half the time, doesn't he?
Yeah, so that was always the big comparison. But then I think a lot of fans felt that those early grunge bands just did this sound better, whereas this is post-grunge because it came a little bit after, and it's a bit more radio catered to. So yeah, I think just oversaturation and a heavy leaning to Christianity and religion was one thing that many fans kind of felt was perhaps just not a little preachy, especially on Creed's end.
Just to elaborate, sorry, Jacob, just to elaborate that one point, I just want to test Ben's encyclopedia brain here. Is that really the difference between grunge and post-grunge, just the more radio-friendly nature of it? I do not understand the difference between the two.
No, I think post-grunge has to be 95 onwards. Bands including Three Doors Down, I would put as like a post-grunge band, especially their early stuff. Creed, absolutely. Nickelback is a post-grunge band, whereas if we're talking grunge, we're talking Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, all that stuff. Post-grunge does have a different sound to it. I can tell immediately when I listen to it.
Okay.
Also, you'll notice with post-grunge, the song lengths are usually 3 minutes 30 or 4 minutes. You're not going to get many tracks that are longer, even though this Creed record is kind of long, actually. A few of the songs do go 5
It touches on close to an hour.
Yeah. No, it's a big record, that one. So,
whereas Silver Side Up, less than 40 minutes. Jacob, I didn't get your overarching thoughts on Creed going into this. Where do they sit with you?
I think Ben kind of hit on the head with the comparisons to older style grunge with both bands, actually, with any sort of sounding like the previous stuff, but not as good. Last time I was on for a Metal Standoff was Silverchair and Pearl Jam, and look, that was early Silverchair and Pearl Jam on their second, and yeah, no, there is a huge quality difference. Not necessarily in production. The production value, I reckon, in these is much better, which might also be why they're worse, in my opinion. But I say that thinking that, part of what made grunge in that music is the underground feel, the less produced feel even, kind of adds something there. But I think there's, as I said, there's a lot to be gained from Creed. It's just there's a lot to be forgotten as well.
And I think it's a testament to how much people didn't like Scott Stapp as a vocalist, because Creed went on to form Alter Bridge, which was 3/4 of Creed, including Mark Tremonti, Scott Phillips on drums, along with Brian Marshall on bass. And people absolutely love Alter Bridge. They are absolutely beloved. So it was never the four members. Well, I guess Creed was hated, but I think Scott Stapp was kind of a huge reason why. And apparently his ego at the time, at their peak, he was completely unbearable to be around, which might also detract from their image as well.
If it saves face, Ben, I don't hate Creed. I just find them very funny, and Scott Stapp is one of the reasons why.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the pants he's wearing in all the film clips. You look at how overly bombastic and silly the music videos are with just horrendously dated CGI.
When you said the costumes, I thought of that with Arms Wide Open video. That is the funniest acting I've ever seen.
It's absolutely hilarious. Like it's just so good. And then it's even more hilarious to say with a straight face that you love the band.
Once again, I'll just run a few good songs because Human Clay is their second album. The songs Torn and the title track for My Own Prison are very good songs by Creed, and I would actually recommend those. And they went on to release Weathered, which came after Human Clay. One Last Breath and My Sacrifice are good songs.
Hey, there we go. We're doing well. Yeah, funnily enough, on the My Own Prison record, that's probably their most loved album in terms of music critics and fanfare. It's a bit more on the grunge side, whereas Human Clay a lot more commercial. But Weathered's probably got the best variety that the band did. And then they came back for one more record in 2009, which Mark Tremonti admits was a little rushed. Some people might argue the whole band's career was rushed, but who knows? Yeah, really looking forward to diving into this. It's going to be awesome.
All right. One final thing before we do, Jacob, what are some songs by Nickelback outside of Silver Side Up that are legitimately very good that you do seek out frequently? Because I can name Burn It to the Ground, Edge of Revolution.
Burn It to the Ground comes to me. I think you've got Burn It Down, Edge of Revolution are two of the best in the whole discography, I think, including this album. I would dare say there are some off the next album, which has escaped my mind the name of it, such as Far Away is a unfortunate lack of mine. It is a guilty pleasure. There are quite a few just guilty pleasures throughout the next album and Dark Horse, and even the album that Edge of a Revolution was on. There's quite a few in there that I seek out every now and then when I'm feeling in what I can only describe as a cringy Nickelback mood. But at the same time, it's not something I seek out actively outside of a few songs.
If you feel rebellious and you want to stick it to someone, you do play Feed the Machine, I must admit. Okay.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's... me personally, this is probably going to be a podcast of which album is the least worse, because Nickelback are a band I'm super indifferent on, and Creed I just find funny. So this is just going to be a case of, all right, which one will I tolerate more? It's not really a best album for me, but Ben, as the passionate fan, has a chance to sway us, doesn't he?
Yes, I'm going to give this my absolute best go. I just want to know, gentlemen, how many times did we get a chance to listen to these two records? Because they would have been fresh for you guys.
Ooh, I think I got through it about 3.5 times. And each time I listened to it differently. First time I listened to, obviously, each album in just as on its own. Second time and third time, I listened to Silver Side 1, Human Clay 1, Silver Side 2, Human Clay 2 in that kind of order to try and get them back and forth to actually compare the pair. So that's where I'm sitting.
Okay. With the strategy bearing all to us here, let's signal over to the timekeeper. Let's get this ready. This is the final Great Metal Standoff. This is our Christmas special, if you will. Timekeeper, ring that bell. Just thought of one final question, gentlemen, about this battle. Are we going to include the With Arms Wide Open string version in the track order?
No, because on the CD version, which I own an original copy from 1999, the string version is not part of the record. Okay. That was on a re-release. So it'll not be counted. But for those who want to watch the With Arms Wide Open video, you will hear the string version. That's the version they use for the film clip.
Is that right? You learn something new every day. Damn.
There you go.
There you go. Okay. First battle, and I am so glad. For a band that gets so much flack over the years, I'm so glad we get to start positively here. Never Again versus Are You Ready? Ben, start us off.
Brilliant. So if we want to say which song kicks off the record better, I was a little disappointed with Never Again in the sense that it just opens with a drum beat and a bit of a bass line. It's a nice groove. It gets quite heavy. But Are You Ready has almost this Middle Eastern tinge to it that I really dig. And it's kind of a theme without the album. We know immediately we're going to have some interesting rhythm and grooves. And I think Are You Ready just comes out of the gates roaring. We get to hear Scott Stapp for the first time, whose voice is actually quite gravelly on this record. I think his voice gets a bit more smooth and softer on Weathered and then on the newer album as well. So that's interesting to note. But Never Again is classic Nickelback. But for me, Are You Ready does everything a Creed song should. And I really do love the kind of section after the second chorus. It's a nice bridge. And, Scott's going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then he lets it rip and we get heavy distortion. And by the way, I must say on the production of this Creed record, the snare drum is one of my favorite snare drums ever. It just pops. It sounds so clear. Scott Phillips' drum performance on this record is perfect. And I just love how much distortion and energy is in the guitar, how this was recorded. Funnily enough, it was actually recorded not in a studio, this Creed album. It was actually recorded at the producer's house, which was John Kurzweg, who also did Puddle of Mud records and so forth. So both great tracks, both open up the albums well. But Are You Ready for me I'm ready. It's winning early.
Jacob.
That was a lot more, I guess, concise than I thought it'd be. I think I'm on a similar note, though. I think both are great opens. Both are very crunchy. Both are very heavy songs to open, and both kind of describe the rest of the album very, very, very well, with a few exceptions, of course. I do not know which one at the moment I think is better. Both are good, and both, in my opinion, though, have little bits of problem, in my opinion. Whereas I think Are You Ready kind of comes out as a little too soft at the beginning to transition up, which is very Creed, but that's how it is. And Never Again has weird breakdown only vocal parts. There's a lot of vocal effects that Nickelback uses throughout this entire album that do not sit right with me. They just don't work, in my opinion. Now, I think they're both great. I think for the most part, each are unbelievably solid opens and maybe some of the best in the entire discography for both bands. But I think for my money, I'm going to go away from the crunchy song and go with Are You Ready? Which I think they both have problems, but I see more problems with the vocal effects in Never Again than I do Are You Ready? And the only problems I have with Are You Ready only exist for like a second. So
I'd like to make a comment, Jacob. I really did appreciate you mentioning about some of the vocal effects that Nickelback use on this record. And it is true, they don't actually bring these vocal effects back on any of their later recordings. Woke Up This Morning has Chad at one point sounding like he's talking through a walkie-talkie or a speaker, megaphone type of thing. Like that just never came back. And yeah, for Nickelback, it's kind of maybe a little bit odd that Chad's singing over just this bass line and drum groove. He doesn't do that a lot. Sometimes they'll do it, but not very often at all. So yeah, it's good points on both.
I also think just the lyrics for an opening. Never Again, obviously, is a quite dark song when you look into what the lyrics mean. Whereas Are You Ready? I very much see it as just are you ready for what's to come, which is the rest of the album. And then the countdown is counting down to the end of the song and more of the album. To me, this is literally, the welcome, come on in, come listen to more Creed. It's a bit of a trap, but that's all good. It's a good trap at this start.
I'll divert the interpretation just a little bit. The lyric, your life has just begun. Maybe it's a metaphor for the start of life. Are you ready? Are you ready for what's to come in life ahead? All honesty, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 I thought was a bit naff, but I can deal with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, I can argue it's naff, but I think how they executed that, and definitely on the voice change and just the grit when the distortion comes back in, Scott really, I don't know, I get this crazy adrenaline rush when that hits. I don't know, call me nuts, but that just works for me. That build up, it was quite well done.
For someone who finds Scott Stapp's voice typically very, very funny, because it's just really fun to impersonate, you can't take it seriously, this was the one song off Human Clay where I could go, okay, yeah, I can take this one seriously. This is a stellar start. Never Again for me. I wanted to actually follow up on a point you were making, Ben. I thought the talk box style of vocal is a very signature sound for Nickelback, because when you see them at a live show, for example, you have your standard stadium mic, and then by the side they have the talk box.
Yeah, nothing's coming to mind on later records for the talk box, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I'll have to
It might appear on some of the smaller pieces, because even trying to think of what the more commercially successful ones on Silver Side Up, I can't think of many with the talk box involved.
No, that's it. I think because we have to remember this was the first record where they commercially really exploded. The State, which was the previous album, was still quite in the grunge roots, more so than this more commercial radio rock sound. This was the beginning of bigger and crazier things in terms of commercial success for Nickelback. And I think we could tell the transition was in full effect, especially with what we're going to dive into shortly, How You Remind Me, and many others.
In conclusion, to complete the trifecta, Never Again, fair enough, I guess. Are you ready? Oh, yes, yes, I'm ready for what's to come. That's my point too. Complete the trifecta. Are you ready is an easy win there. Moving on. Okay, Ben, you've just hinted at it. How You Remind Me versus What If. How You Remind Me is massive. I'm not quite sure why. It's a fairly standard song. Change My Mind.
Funnily enough, when you talk about Nickelback, a lot of people love the track How You Remind Me. In fact, when the band released it, they were actually super popular. Like, everybody loved Nickelback. I know this is kind of unfathomable, but it was 2001 and it was a new band on the scene from Canada. And they had this track that, to be fair, pretty much as soon as you hear it, it'll get stuck in your head. It's very catchy.
Especially those opening chord progressions. It's very pleasing on the ear. The ding, 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 ding.
It is. And we hear, never made it as a wise man. I couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing. And there's just something.
You remind me.
There's just something about it that it raises a smile almost instantly as soon as you hear this. This song is absolutely iconic. It was actually the biggest selling single of the decade of the 2000s until someone the following year, also from Canada, named Avril Lavigne, released her track Complicated, which beat out How You Remind Me, which is even more hilarious because Avril and Chad actually were married.
Got married at one point.
for a period of time. So I just think that's just such a fun fact. But yeah, this was one of probably the biggest rock song of the 2000s. And it was the launch of this band to come. And they had single after single after this, almost to the point of it being sickening to many people, because Nickelback just dominated the airwaves in the early 2000s. But the film clip to it is quite funny. Chad Kroger's hair gets compared to a dog quite a lot, if you've seen that meme. And I think it's just a fun song. It really is. It's well done. It's so simple. Chad wrote the track in 5 minutes, and it's still a track that lives on in music history all these years later.
It's amazing looking into the actual history behind him writing the track, because, as you said, he wrote it in 5 minutes. He had an argument with his wife, and then went down to his basement and literally just sat there angrily writing what he wanted to say during the argument. And this is the song. One of his most successful songs. The most successful song, even.
It's crazy. There's a lot of talk in the industry that the tracks you write in 5 to 10 minutes end up being your biggest. And it must be the simplicity. It just, that has to be it. It wasn't overthought. It was just some emotion he had at the time. And yeah, people just seem to connect with this track a lot. I mean, you just could not escape it at the time. It was fantastic.
I don't blame them. That's part of why I love this track so much. Everything about it, it's not complicated. It's super, super digestible. You guys sung the first line, and after that, my initial thought was to do the drum fill. The drum fill in this is one of the most fun. The doo, 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 doo. Like, it is one of the more fun drum fills to do. And yeah, there's bits of the song that I think are a bit naff, bit here, there. The whole I cannot stand that. But at the same time, that's evened out to me by the, I think it's in the second chorus, the way he says, and I've been wrong, and so on. Because the way that comes out, it's really easy to get into and just almost, to me, this is one of the best karaoke songs in the world because of how easy it is.
I got to give credit to Chad. I think Chad's voice really does well here, to be honest. I think he just absolutely nails this, especially on the final bit before the third chorus, where the song starts winding down. We get that really nice light guitar that kind of washes over you a little bit. And then you hear Chad's voice and, it's very soft, it's light, but I think he does well here. I mean, normally he's quite gritty and gruff and so forth, but here I think we get some nice little shades of how talented he can be.
Definitely.
We haven't even discussed What If. That just shows how massive how You Remind Me has been across the music world all these years. But What If, I'll start you guys off. It's deceptively aggressive, that one.
Oh, this is one of Creed's heaviest songs. This is a ripper of a track. In fact, if you've watched the music video, highly recommend those listening to do so. It's actually a reference to Scream 3. So you're going to see David Arquette in it. You're going to see Scott Stapp being chased around by the Scream guy with the knife. It's incredibly funny. And I knew that Jason was already a massive fan of how funny Scott was. So when you combine those two worlds together, life just doesn't get any better than this. I really like this song a lot. I can't remember how many times the words "What If" is repeated. I think it's 30 plus or 40 plus. It's outrageously
It is repeated for about a minute straight in fairness.
Oh, there we are.
About approximation.
53 times it's said in this song. So it is, as I said, one of Creed's heaviest songs, although Bullets, which is the opening track off Weather, that's probably their all-time heaviest. And I would actually argue this is more of a metal song than a rock song. I think this gets very, very heavy.
What I love about it is it's deceptive at the start, because it starts off very soft. And even in my notes, I've got almost medieval-like. Like, it sounds like you could play that opening couple notes on a lute. And it's very ominous. And then all of a sudden you hear, is it a record scratch? I'm not sure what you'd call it, but that start to build up, and that build up to when it actually kicks off is one of my favorite build-ups in music, just because it's so, like, it gets you really, really, really excited. And then the chorus itself, I think the chorus is better to that of How You Remind Me, honestly.
Isn't the chorus though just the repetition of What If?
No, it's what if you did, what if you lied?
Oh, of course, yes.
What if I avenged? What if I for an eye? It's fun stuff. It's catchy, it's simple. And again, I think it just shows how heavy these commercial rock bands could be. Because to me, this really goes hard. I mean, another band that comes to mind instantly that was very commercially successful, that was stupidly heavy, is Godsmack. I think Godsmack have tremendous energy. And here too, just captured beautifully. Great performance from both. But gentlemen, we can only pick one.
I can only pick one. What If, deceptively heavy. How You Remind Me for me is it's just inoffensive. It's, gets you by. It's fine. I understand that, it's their biggest song. It's fine. It's inoffensive.
I think for me, it's a matter of they're both good. What If would win if it wasn't for the breakdown and what the vocals do. That is the biggest, to me, in my notes, it literally says ruins an otherwise great song. So for me, it has to be How You Remind Me, because it's like, this is the Smells Like Teen Spirit for Nickelback. This is their song. This is the song that everyone knows when you say Nickelback.
Both are fantastic songs. Both have music videos. Only one can win. And How You Remind Me is just too important in rock history. I think it completely launched this band's career. And it's kept them big even all these years later. And if we're talking longevity, I think Nickelback has done tremendously well. Creed fell off the map after 2001. They disbanded for a long time. But How You Remind Me was the start of so many radio hits for Nickelback. and what a journey it's been.
I don't have too much of a dog in this fight. I could go either way and it wouldn't worry me. Sod it, how you remind me. Don't have much of a dog in that fight, but I'll take how you remind me. Complete the trifecta, why not? Woke Up This Morning versus Beautiful.
I can tell you right now very confidently that Woke Up This Morning will not win this for me. Woke Up This
Why is
Morning,
that?
apart from the interesting and boppy opening for maybe the first 30 seconds, the guitar riff, the main guitar riff, you get sick of it by second 45, I reckon. The vocal effect, not even vocal effects, just how quick he's singing, I despise it. The bridge is okay, and the chorus is okay at best, but this is brought down by vocal effects and a repetitive instrumental piece, and I feel like this is, if not throwaway, really experimental where it doesn't need to be. And like, I'll pull a line from the song. I'm hating all of this. I cannot stand this song. Where do you guys sit on this one?
Well, Jacob, I had a very different take to you when Nickelback played Woke Up This Morning live and I lost my mind. I absolutely love this song. I think the riff is brilliant. I love the various vocal techniques Chad uses, and he is talking quite quickly on this. I will say that it's more of a talking kind of part throughout the verses than actually singing. Really just love the dynamics in this track. The chorus it hits, and the riff, the rhythm that plays over it, I really like. And Beautiful, to me, is a great song off a brilliant record from Creed. However, it's definitely just not one of the top 5 tracks on the album for me. It kind of just doesn't get there. It wasn't as good as what's about to come. So yeah, I think Woke Up This Morning definitely would take the cake for me out of the two.
Interesting. I think Beautiful carries it over just because of that bridge. I agree with you that the song itself is not amazing. I think, honestly, this might be the weakest point on both albums. And that's saying something for later. But
that is a brilliant bridge, and on that Creed track, and it's something, I don't know if you noticed, Creed do bridges incredibly well. They've got a real knack at writing a strong bridge.
I also put interestingly on my notes that, and this would have been the first time listening, that the song reminds me for some reason of some of the, I guess, softer stuff that Disturbed had. It has a lot of the same, I guess, tempo feel to it. Like, I'm brought to songs like The Light or something like that. I can draw a lot of comparisons to that, and I'm not the biggest Disturbed fan, but they do have a lot good, and this reminds me of that. If you'd shown me this outside of Creed, you could have convinced me it was Disturbed, and for that reason alone, I think this is going to win it for me.
Nice.
Again, no dog in the fight, and I'm both very indifferent to both of these, to be honest. Okay. Woke up this morning. To your point on vocals, Ben, chorus vocals are much better than the verses, to be honest.
I do agree with that.
Fuzzy bridge, I've gotten my notes for Woke Up This Morning. Beautiful. I thought it would be a ballad. It seems so. It's not really. It's a bit more heavier than that. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Any other arguments you guys got to convince me on either side?
The bass in Beautiful, admittedly, it doesn't remind. I can't think of it at the moment because it's not a song I'm overly familiar with. But I remember the bass in it being, on the second listen, one of my favorite things to hear. It was almost just like a breath of fresh air in this song. The bass line is really good, and there's nothing wrong with the song. It's solid. It's like very run of the mill. This is your 50% type of song. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to stand out apart from that bridge.
It feels...
Again, I just go back to that production. The bass throughout this whole record, you can hear the drums are crystal, the vocals sit nicely, the guitar just washes over you, especially the lighter sections. Just very, very well produced by good old John Kurzweg. Good stuff.
Which one would I seek out more? It's coming down to that for me. So Jacob's gone Beautiful and Ben has gone Woke Up This Morning.
One final point to sway you. I do agree with Jacob. I think that bridge in Beautiful is the best part of either song, even though I went the opposite.
Neither of these do anything for me. This could change. I'll put an asterisk on it just because I don't know in the long run which one I'm going to be sticking out again. I feel like I'm going to gravitate to Beautiful more than I am Woke Up This Morning, so I'll take it. But neither of these do anything for me. Apologies if that's upset anyone, but well.
No, we're all being honest here. We're all enjoying a nice breakdown of music.
A nice breakdown. Speaking about breakdowns, it's too bad, too bad, too bad, too bad versus Say I. Say I. Those are the songs.
Quite interesting to note. And funny, I never noticed this the first few times I listened to Too Bad, how cartoony the bass is. The bass line in this song is very odd, but I like it.
This song is fun.
Yeah, this is a fun song. This is just a rocking out song, just being free and easy. You don't have a care in the world. I think it's fair to say, too, that the music video for this, shout out to my friend Ash who pointed this out. There's this point where it comes back from a really great guitar solo from Ryan Peake, and then you see the camera just stationary and Chad Kroger's head just peers into the frame in it with a serious look, and it's the funniest thing you'll ever see. So highly recommend checking out that music video as well. But Say I has just an absolutely incredible guitar melody throughout this whole thing, especially in the verse sections. I just can't get enough of that riff.
How would you describe that?
Oh, it's a tricky one to describe. It reminds me a little bit of 80s Testament when Alex Skolnick would use kind of jazz-infused licks into their heavy metal. There's a little bit of kind of jazz going on here, I think. It's definitely an inspiration. It's a hard one to describe, but it's just this gorgeous pattern that plays over and over. And Scott's voice, I think, it's not as gritty over these light sections, and it sounds beautiful. Even though the track's not called Beautiful. Yeah, I cannot go past Say I. It's an absolute favorite of mine on the record. It's not the best on the album, but it's also worth mentioning in the chorus, Mark sometimes kind of breaks away from the normal riffing and he'll add a little bit of extra flair, which is another thing that he does on the track Higher as well, which was a massive commercial hit, which we'll look at later on. But curious on your guys' thoughts, but I think I know where I'm going to go with this one.
I think for myself, I'm very much leaning towards Too Bad. It's too much of a fun song to ignore. And as much as I don't mind Say I, to me, it was a very boring track. Nothing stood out. The only thing that really stood out even was the extra vocal line. There's almost a layering of vocals in the bridge that was just way too much. And to me, that kind of brought what was an okay song, one that I could listen to again, to something where I'd get through the second chorus and skip it then, because I don't want to hear what was honestly just a jumbled mess of vocals that don't sound like they're singing. That and the verses feel empty. I know that might be the point of it, but it feels very empty. Like, I get this vibe that I've been lost in a desert and Scott Sapp is like singing to me somewhere. That's the whole vibe.
There's these weird Egyptian kind of Middle Eastern undertones throughout this whole record. I can't quite explain it, but it's this theme that I keep getting.
I'm so glad you said that, Ben. In my notes for Say I, you could use the instrumentation for an Egyptian nature documentary.
It's very true. It's very true. And there has to be something to this, because there's a lot of albums I love that have kind of that similar theme. I'd even point to Iron Maiden with their Power Slave record, which has got kind of a lot of Egyptian themes to it. Godsmack with their album, not Awake, it's the one after, the one with I Stand Alone. Faceless. That's got sand on the cover and a face, and it's very Egyptian sounding as well. Yeah, and that almost should have been the comparison. It should have been Human Clay versus Faceless, because they're both so sandy.
This music is sandy.
It
Great
is.
Metal
It's
Standoff.
a new genre. Get on it. I do want to mention also with Say I, this line was penned before the band came up with the album title, but the dust has finally settled on the field of Human Clay. And then they liked Human Clay, and that became the title of the record.
Since we're now talking about the title of the record, can I just point something out, Ben? On an episode of Mosh Pit a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to dedicate some time to talk about the importance of album art and cover art and all that kind of thing. Can I just get this statement off my chest right now? I personally believe the Human Clay cover art is one of the worst in rock.
Yeah.
You know what? If someone gave me the vinyl of this, I'd be absolutely ecstatic. I love the cover. I don't know why. Maybe I just love the music too much. But to me, the cover really... the music does feel like it belongs with that cover on it.
The cover reminds me of very much the bad CGI of this time. It reminds me of,
That's a
like
good way to put
Scorpion
it.
King. That's what it makes me think of.
Mummy
It
Returns.
doesn't make me think, oh, yeah, I'm going to listen to some really, I don't want to say laid back, some more epic style rock. Instead, I just go, oh, I'm going to listen to some crap.
I think it's fair to say neither of these album covers are overly great. I don't think the
They're
Nickelback
not.
one's very good either.
No. I think that's very
Yeah,
poorly photoshopped if Photoshop was a thing in 2001.
If we look to the follow-up Nickelback album, The Long Road, I actually think that's a brilliant cover. I really like it. It's simple, but
Do
it
agree
looks
with
nice. It's a bridge, and that's about it. I like bridges. What can I say? Speaking of which, boys, it's time we make a decision and cross over that bridge and move to the following track. Which one are we going to go with?
Too bad. Easily. It's anything but too bad. It is honestly too good for this album, if I'm being completely honest.
So this would be the favorite track of the record for you?
I would argue so. This is the maybe How You Remind Me I'd put on more just because it's How You Remind Me. But if I was to choose one for pure enjoyment, this is it.
The way I described Too Bad was, oh God, there's tin can snare in the drums. No. And in fairness, chorus I originally wrote on listen number 1, I was indifferent to, and now I've given it an extra listen and I went, it's fair enough. There's a bit of a lead guitar at the end that I wish went somewhere. That's what I've written in my notes retrospectively.
Really appreciate the tin can snare observation, which is Ryan Vickerdell, who played with Nickelback for a few records. The last album he appeared on was The Long Road, which also has that tin can snare. I can't get enough of it, though, because unlike Saint Anger with Metallica, where they completely just bastardized that snare drum, I think here it's done well enough that it still kind of gives some nice kinetic energy, and it's not too overpowering in the mix. So yeah, I think it's good. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go Say I. That melody throughout the verses with the guitar, Mark Tremonti, he is just so underrated at how good he is at doing this. He's done it his whole career. He always comes up with beautiful melodies on the guitar. So Say I wins for me.
I'm with you, Ben. Say I became more curious as to the music and sonic picture from the bridge, like the vocals in the bridge. It felt almost psychedelic, really, because it's panning across all the channels if you're listening with headphones. I described the verse rips as enchanted. I used a bit more descriptive verbiage because, smart Alec. But no, there's a lot more curiosity about in Say I for me, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I think the guitar work you'd almost call intriguing. It kind of draws you in. You want to know where's the song going to go. Yeah, good stuff.
Certainly so. We'll get a quick score update right now. We'll start off with Ben, our Nickelback and Creed fanatic. He is at a stalemate at 2-2.
Oh, how about
right
that?
Down the middle.
Right down the middle. So are you, Jacob.
Oh, okay.
However, for me, Creed is in the lead 3-1.
Oh, wow. How about
okay.
that? So, gee.
Ooh, indeed. It's a very tight race. I didn't expect that. This is a battle to see who's the least worst, but it's tight, surprisingly. Okay, Just For versus Wrong Way. Just For, the hook is, yes, I do. And Wrong Way is just, yeah.
I absolutely adore how Chad Kroeger sings the verse in this song. I can't get enough of that hook. And to me, that's not an overly Nickelback melody. Like that style of Chad holding those really long notes. He doesn't do that a lot, at least not to me. I think that's brilliant. And then it's a pretty typical Nickelback chorus in this track. It's rock and roll. It's a bit of fun, plenty of energy. But Wrong Way is just so good. Like there's a riff in it, and I mentioned this earlier on to the boys that there's a riff midway through this song. It just punches you in the face. It sounds so heavy. The distortion on the guitar is just fantastic from Mark Tremonti. As always, I'm going to praise him all the time. And I
As you
just
should.
love, yeah, I just love the melody over this song. And credit to Scott, I do think he really does go pretty hard. Like to hit some of those vocal lines with that much grit and that much energy, Jason, I don't think you could half do that. I think you'd have to put a lot of effort into getting that right.
Perhaps. I'm not exactly a singer, so the best I can do is just poor imitations. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's all I can offer. Conversely, Ben, I started thinking that the Human Clay album just starts very similar to every other track. I was thinking it starts again with an intricate guitar riff, clean guitar riff, and I'm starting to think, I think almost all of these songs off Human Clay are sounding like that, and I'm starting, okay, they're going to change it up yet, but the first half of the song is very simmering, and then it goes bang. In contrast, Just Fall. I think I might be ruining this for you, Ben, but for some reason I wrote down in my notes, it sounded tiny, tiny bit, just a tiny little bit, like Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh, with the riff, I can
The
hear
riff,
that.
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I
And it
never
does
picked
the
that up.
loud, soft, loud thing that Nirvana would do.
Yeah,
Mm.
nah, that is good fun. Yeah, no, good points.
I don't think I've ever picked up on that, but yeah, I can hear it. And
Mm.
that's saying something too, because I quite like this song. I think it's nothing overly great, but I agree with Ben on the verses and how it's sung, and the instrumental part of it is just, I kill for this type of verse. Chorus, as you said, it's very standard Nickelback.
Then I think I'm in a separate camp to you guys. I preferred when Kroger let it rip. I wasn't that all in on the verses.
Interesting to note, this track is probably the closest we get to Curb Nickelback or The State, which were the two previous records, and that's when they were more heavy grunge.
Right, duly noted.
So, yeah, I think this is kind of a bit of a throwback, and if this was something Jacob enjoyed, The State would probably be his favorite album, which has the single Leader of Men on it, which is a great song, The Leader of Man, rather.
Yeah, definitely. I think, though, for Wrong Way, I just could not get into this. This is, I think, as Jason said, this is another one where they start the exact same way. And for me, this is where that starts to get old. That same slow, ominous, echoey, intricate opening. And yeah, the song is all right. And it's got some crunch to it. And I reckon the second half of the song is a million times better than the first once they start actually building up and there's something back to it. But that takes too long to get to one of the better songs on this album. It's half great, half terrible.
I went in hard on that riff on Wrong Way by Creed. I complimented how good it was. And I think that's part of the charm and the craft is when the band is so light for so long and then they hit you in the face with like a heavy riff. And I think that's why it all just kind of works in a sense. I know it's been done to death, but also on what Jason mentioned, yes, I've listened to all 4 Creed records a ridiculous amount of times. And as far as sameness goes and formula, this album, everything does blend together, I think, a lot more, especially than Weathered or My Own Prison.
Human Clay's the worst offender. All right. Okay.
Definitely in terms of the idea of this light guitar into a heavy chorus and then light again and so forth. I think, yeah, this album does do that probably a little bit too heavily.
Right. Just for me, I think I'll start the final decision for this one. This came down to Wrong Way. The only takeaway from that is, yeah, because that gets stuck in your head really, really quickly. Everything else is just But Just For, again, pretty indifferent, bit Nirvana structured, dare I say. Once again, if I am completely wrong, please do fact check me because I'd much rather be wrong on that one. I liked it better when Kroger let it out a little bit more. So maybe that's the reason I'm going to take Just For.
No, I think I'm going to agree with you on Just For. Slightly different reason. And look, I mean, as I said, Wrong Way has all the potential in the world. Problem is, it waits until about 2 minutes into a 4-minute song to really let out this amazing song. So for me, it's going to go with Just For, just because it's consistently really, really good. Whereas I think the best part of Wrong Way is better than Just For, but it's so much bad before the good.
As we head to the crossroads of both these albums, we're getting right into the middle. I think, and I'm not going to reveal yet, I think one album actually picks up and gets a lot better, and one album actually dips and gets worse from here. But with that said, I think Just For is one of the best tracks off this record by Nickelback. I go to it a lot. I really do like this song. It's definitely one of my favorites off it. It's good stuff. But yeah, shout out to that riff on Wrong Way. That is one of the best riffs of that record. But Nickelback got it.
So is it a trifecta? We're all taking Just For, are we?
Seems
Yes,
to be.
we are.
Interesting. Once again, I'm indifferent to Just For. It's the personification of the phrase just about bearable, for me at least. Well.
Yeah.
Moving on now. Hollywood versus Faceless Man, which is actually Wrong Way doesn't truly end. It just transitions into Faceless Man. Once again, same style of intro, however. It's still that same melodic, clean guitar intro, but I will say I think it is the hidden gem of Human Clay.
I'm about to make a statement that all the listeners listening and you guys are allowed to freely laugh at. Faceless Man is in my top 100 songs of all time. This is an absolute favorite track of mine. I cannot get enough of it. I think it's absolutely incredible. Just everything about it. Love the guitar melody. Love Scott and just, how his voice just slowly starts going through this song. And then, oh my gosh, you know that joke or that meme of a person listening to Killswitch Engage and they got their fists in the air and they've got a tear in their eye? That's me listening to the last 2 minutes of this song. I'm just tearing up and I'm just pumping away. It's it's incredible. Hollywood is more run-of-the-mill Nickelback, I think. And to be honest, it's just a very forgettable number from them. And for the most part, their songs generally always stick in my head, but Hollywood just doesn't quite get there. It only clocks in just over 3 minutes. Faceless
It would work
Man,
if you were surrounded by a trailer park environment.
It would work much better, I think, definitely, yeah. Maybe that's half the problem. I just was in the wrong environment. But, Jason, take me through it. And, boys, Faceless Man, what was our thought on it and Hollywood?
I'm interested in Jacob's take, actually.
I almost completely agree with Ben here. Faceless Man, and Jason too. Faceless Man I don't think it's the best. I think the best is yet to come. But I would call this second or third best on the entire album. Between both albums even. It takes so long with this soft, really relaxing, almost acoustic type of sound. And yeah, eventually drums pop into that. But even then, it's still very much just it's just sat almost just going along with these drums, these acoustic sounds, and just relaxing through it. And then it picks up once, just a little bit. You start to get the heavier electric, and it sits very well through there. Sap picks up again. It all complements itself, and then again later on, it picks up a little bit more, and the transition is perfect. I think the second set of heavy pickup is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And the bridge itself, again, great. To me, this is the song that I would, if someone asked me, can you describe what a Creed song, what a really good Creed song would sound like? This is it.
Especially one that goes under the radar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is a very underrated track, this one, but oh, man.
It's interesting because it does start with that formula, and I think it does have the patented Creed formula of really soft, really heavy, really soft, heavier than before. But this does it the best out of all of them, in my opinion, whereas Hollywood, It's another one I just don't like. It's very, as you said, run-of-the-mill Nickelback, and it's not a good run-of-the-mill Nickelback. It's got that very country timbre. I can't imagine hearing this naturally outside of a rodeo or something that I would not be at. And like the guitar, I don't like it following the vocals directly the way they do. I don't like the almost robotic vocals that are used. This is where the effects really start to annoy me. To me, this song is very throwaway, very skippable, very eh. So for me, I can't look past Faceless Man. It's so good.
So even though Jacob, you admit you're not a big Creed fan by any means, their formula can actually work if it's executed the right way.
Yeah, I genuinely think this is with both of these bands. There's potential. There was, I guess, potential for this kind of
Creed,
music.
yes.
Yeah, for this kind of song to be on almost every album, almost every type of song. Obviously with alterations and stuff, but this is perfect Creed. This is what Creed should have been in my mind.
I also want to shout out that even though this was quite a massive commercial record, it's really nice to see Faceless Man clocking in at just shy of 6 minutes. And they do it again with Wash Away Those Tears, which goes a little over 6 minutes as well. So I'm liking this length that we got going. It's a little bit of a far cry from what a lot of these bands were doing at the time.
It gives breath and room for that formula for the soft to heavy. It gives the transition to not be jarring, actually lets it breathe in that space, which is part of why the song works so well.
And to elaborate on that composition, what are those compositions? How does it make you feel? Because I know me personally, it emits like that one versus all spiritual journey, staring the challenge at head and taking it on at full force. That's the feeling I get. It amps you up. It's like, I'm going to take on the world against this Faceless Man. What does it make you feel?
I kind of get that.
Yeah, to me, this feels like the most religious sounding Creed song I've heard. You know, like you're at the gates of heaven, and I don't know. There's just something. Or actually, you know what? I always see a river when I listen to this song, for whatever reason, and like in a boat streaming. I don't know.
I was thinking desert, me.
Interesting. I do. For those listening to Great Metal Standoff, firstly, thank you, the best. But if there was one track on the record to give a try that I probably think you would not have heard unless you heard the album, I think Faceless Man's probably the one. I think it's got the most to offer.
Yeah,
definitely.
Certainly so.
Definitely.
So all three of us are taking Faceless Man. That's a well-deserved point, I reckon. Faceless Man, hidden gem off it.
Can I just mention, I would have been pretty crushed if neither of you guys thought that song was any good. So I'm thrilled to hear that we can agree on that one.
Lovely. Next up, well, we were talking about Hollywood being a bit run-of-the-mill. This is probably one of my run-of-the-mills. Money Bought versus Never Die.
Yeah, shout out to Never Die by Creed and Scott Phillips, who just does such a tremendous bit of flair on the drum work here. I'm hoping you guys notice the cymbal patterns keep changing. He'll go ting, and then there'll be a bit of silence, which is it's a drum technique that isn't done enough, in my opinion, but he adds these nice little flourishes throughout this track to kind of bring it to another level. Mark Tremonti, again, he's doing his typical light guitar work that, you know, it's kind of been drilled into our head. He's so good at it. He just keeps doing it. I love Never Die. I think it's a great song. It's an underrated Creed track, and we're about to hit two monsters after it. But yeah, Money Bought here's the problem with a lot of Nickelback records. I think there's always some really great deep hidden cuts throughout, especially the next 3 to 4 albums that follow. Whereas on this Silver Side Up album, it seems as if things just kind of got a little lost in translation from here on out. Hangnail is tremendous. We'll get to that in a bit. But Money Bought is just a 3-minute 25 hard rock track, well produced. It's a bit of fun, but at the end of the day, I don't think it has much to say.
Interesting. I'm not sure where I sit on this, to be honest. I wasn't actually the biggest fan of Never Die, interestingly. I thought it dragged on a little bit. The bridge was okay. The vocal melody annoyed the hell out of me. I found the chorus to be boring. The drums were okay, as any song in Creed is. The drums are always good. But this, to me, it was one of the most boring songs for me. I didn't like the vocals. The bass, of course, was good. But this is the song that made me want to skip it. I listened to it and always I got a headache. I could not stand the opening. This song to me is a huge no, and I can't really put my finger on why. I think it might be like even the opening, just the
It's another
like,
clean, intricate open, Jacob.
yeah.
Another one.
Another one. How many have we had in a row? 4, 5?
And I think because that carries through the whole time, it just gets to me a little bit too much. Whereas Moneyboard's nothing special, admittedly, but it's a fun Nickelback tune. It's if I was at a pub or something and it popped on, I could see myself tapping my foot along with it. Maybe not anything more than that though. This has literally come down to I don't like Never Die.
These are my notes, Jacob, on Moneyboard. Drums are fine. Indifferent riff, indifferent vocals. It sounds like something out of a rich jock house party.
Yeah.
And then on the second listen, I was like, oh, maybe lyrically it's a bit of a piss take. I don't know. That's all I have on Moneyboard, Ben.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know whether they just rushed out some of the songs on this one. Actually, I do know the answer to that. That's not true at all. In fact, a lot of the tracks on Silver Side Up were being performed live before The State was even released, which that album came out years before. So these songs have been lying around for a while, but the transition from the songs live to the studio record, at least in the back half of this album, just didn't quite come together as much as I think later albums did, rather.
Right.
Yeah, no argument there.
Right. Final decisions. Where are we lying?
Moneyboard.
Yeah, I think Never Die, but I do agree with Jacob. It's a very repetitive riff. Even in the chorus, it's still the same riff. It's just gone from light to distortion. So, yeah, but Never Die for me. I love the drums in it. I think they're fantastic. And Scott, again, he's just, good stuff, fun stuff.
I wanted to ask you about a certain interpretation I had, Ben. Would it be valid to say Never Die is maybe the grungiest, grungiest air quotes, song on Human Clay?
Yes, correct. Absolutely.
That's a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement. I think the chorus, for sure. So let the children pray. Yeah, no, I can hear that. Absolutely. Fair point.
And vocally, we also have that small return to, that psychedelic feel vocally in Beautiful, where around about the bridge, I think, again, Ben, there's some vocals panning across both channels of your speakers or of your headphones or whatever it is you're listening to. And that leaves curiosity, leaves a bit of intrigue.
It's another great bridge too. It's just something they seem to really do well. If you want to know why I've listened to this album so many times, it's these light guitar parts and these vocal melodies and the bridge. I understand to some people, like, some of this would sound quite boring, but I don't know. It always drew me back for whatever reason. It just intrigued me. So yeah, I quite dig it.
I don't go that far, Ben. They don't really draw me back. I just let them pass, and it's like, all right, great.
Yeah,
but I would take Never Die over Moneyball, which just does nothing. I think upon listening to it a couple other times, but just before recording, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, you're not so bad. It's it's become quite endearing, but I think I'd take Never Die over Moneyball. All right, score check. How's this sound? Let's go to the scores. For myself, Creed is in the lead 5-2, and good God Almighty, Ben, 3-all.
Yeah, this is crazy. This is honestly far closer than I was expecting it to be.
Actually, I've been corrected. It's 4-3 Human Clay.
4-3, okay.
I've been corrected. Jacob, Nickelback is in the lead. Silver Side Up, 4-3.
That won't last. That won't last because the next tracks in Creed's Human Clay are the best, arguably the best Creed songs.
I cannot wait to talk about this. Where Do I Hide versus With Arms Wide Open. Let's begin. With Arms Wide Open. I don't even care what it goes against. Where Do I Hide is an upgrade from Hollywood and Moneyball. But think of the memes with Arms Wide Open. Just the meme factor alone.
See, the sad part is I actually really like the song. It is
unironically
such a slow, unironically.
Brave man.
Busy, kicks in. It's soft yet powerful. It's a great rock ballad. Let's be honest. Later on, they start strumming along with the beat, like just a with every, I guess, bigger point of the lyrics. It starts with the heartbeat, which is symbolic to what the song was actually written about. Obviously, being Scott Stapp writing this for his kid once he found out he was going to be a father, with the intention of, don't get too stuck in religion, blah, 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 blah. I think the vocals, this is Creed ballad perfection. It's not busy. It's really easy to digest. There's nothing I don't like about this song, to be honest.
Yeah, this is just an absolute classic. This track with Arms Wide Open. Scott Stapp, he wrote the lyrics when he found out, as we can tell from the lyrics, that with great surprise he was going to be a father, which was really nice. And we know that from the opening line. Well, I just heard the news today. It's classic. It is it's similar to how you remind me with Never Made It as Wise Man. Just they're probably like the two lines that you think of immediately when you think of these records. Yeah, I agree with Jacob. This song isn't too busy.
No.
Another great Mark Tremonti light guitar piece. And also, I really love the power chord, even though it's still light when the drums kick in on the chorus. It sounds really nice, and it sounds like you're being... something's just washed over you. I used that earlier, but I'm going to say it again because they do it quite well. Funny to note, this track went number one in the US. It's Creed's only ever number one hit for 1 week.
The pinnacle of the rock world was defined by that for a week.
November 11, 2000. For 1 week.
So that would have been around about my first birthday.
How about
the week
that?
of my first birthday, the rock world was defined by With Arms Wide Open. That is hilarious.
There's 3 versions of this song. You've got one which is the original album version, which again doesn't have strings. Then we've got the radio edit, and then we've also got the strings remix. And they're all good versions, but I actually like it without the strings, which is funny because another track that kind of reminds me of this is Drops of Jupiter by Train. But if you were to take away the strings in Drops of Jupiter, it wouldn't be the same song, in my opinion. However, with Arms Wide Open, brilliant. It's really fun stuff. But also, it went number one in Canada. For Australia, it hit number 4 peak position. So didn't quite do as well. But this is a song that still lives on in karaoke to this day.
We're also forgetting one thing. With Arms Wide Open won them a Grammy.
It certainly did.
Yeah.
Mark Tremonti has a Grammy for With Arms Wide Open, but he doesn't have one for Alter Bridge, and I think that is terrible to think about.
Yeah, I do wonder, and I strongly believe Alter Bridge are just a victim of timing. They formed when rock music was starting to be on the decline in terms of commercial success, whereas Creed were right in that hotbed of the late 90s, early 2000s, when people were still actively buying CDs like crazy. Yeah, just a bit of a timing issue. It makes me wonder if Alter Bridge were in the 90s, like what would that have looked like? I'm sure they would have been...
They probably would have been one of the most successful bands of the 2000s.
And probably well respected.
And they still are even now, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They may have been the biggest then, but they still are, regardless of forming in 2004.
But both been incredibly successful bands. So that's a credit to Mark and the rest of the band, and also Miles as well, who does a phenomenal job.
I love Miles Kennedy singing.
But
phenomenal.
This is just... Jason, take me through With Arms Wide Open. Where's your head at when you listen to this song? Does it bring you joy?
It brings me barrels of laughs. Barrels of laughs.
Yeah.
It's Scott Stapp at his most nasally. The song is so naive. The song is so soppy. It makes me cringe so much. But I will listen to that any day of the week other than Where Do I Hide. We haven't even talked about it. And I consider Where Do I Hide an upgrade after the last few songs on Nickelback.
Yeah, I agree. I think Where Do I Hide is actually one of the better cuts later in the record. It's heavy. One final thing while I think about it. On With Arms Wide Open, if the song's not funny enough, Scott Stapp singing on top of a mountain.
Yes.
Yes.
Takes this
Yes.
to an absolute another level. It's the best thing you've ever seen. And they back this up. We're going to get to higher soon, but oh my gosh, that video is funny as anything too.
Oh my God.
But
I'm sorry.
yeah,
With Arms Wide Open, I understand it is an incredibly moving ballad, but I just see it's such hot garbage that I can't just not laugh at it, but not love it at the same time.
well, I think it had that appeal, Jason. I think there were people that genuinely liked the song, but then there were also people that thought it was just so blatantly over the top and silly. And regardless, it had people talking. And
Yeah.
you know what? It's better to be talked about in one way or another than to be ignored. Every artist wants people to listen to their art.
Any
And
press is better than no press.
that's
Yeah.
it. You know, I just asked Fred Durst. He'll tell you all about it.
Very true. Very true. And also, I'm just going to bring your attention to one thing. The way he pronounces the word open is also just, it's just perfect. We're
Yeah,
on wide open.
It's incredibly weird, isn't it? How he says that. I
Who
do agree.
pronounces that word that way?
I'm still convinced it's not the word open, it's open. But
Yes.
I've never thought, all the years of listening to that song, I've never realized how weirdly he says that until you just pointed it out.
the thing is, the last time he says it in the song, he says it perfectly. He says it fine.
Yes.
He says open.
Wide
Right at the end.
open.
Yeah,
Which-
I like it. Yeah, I like that note hold at the end of that track, actually. What open? It's so good. So much fun.
And look,
I'm sorry, I have not been able to take this seriously. Can we just all give a point with Arms Wide Open and move on?
Absolutely. That is
Sure.
the killer cut. I also want to mention, I'm always fascinated, where do you put a hit single on an album? And for me, Creed always struck me as really odd that track 8 and track 9 of your record would have the big hits on it.
yeah, that to me it makes no sense.
No. Maybe the idea was that, well, you liked what you heard on the radio, you bought the record, so we want you to listen to 7 songs before you get to it. I'm not sure. I'd love to know how that comes about.
Personally, if I was looking at it from that standpoint, I'd mix it up. Put either Arms Wide Open or Higher, of course, the next one. Put them on separate ends of the album. So
yeah.
if you want one hit, it's song 3. If you want the other hit, it's song 9. You
That's
have
it.
to listen to everything.
That would be the way to do it. I agree.
We laugh and we laugh all day, but with Arms Wide Open, easily getting the points just based on comedy alone. But just a quick sentence on Where Do I Hide? As much as I didn't like the verse vocals, it did sound like something that you'd hear in the soundtrack of an action film, admittedly. Hey?
It did feel
Yeah.
it did kind of feel like it'd be on a backing CD of a Spider-Man movie or something like that. Just one of those extra songs. Although I guess they did get Chad Kroeger for Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire, so I guess I'm not too far off. It was a Chad Kroeger solo song called Hero. It's good stuff. It's even got Tyler Connolly, who formed the band Theory of a Dead Man, not long afterwards either. So it's the Canadian bands are coming back. But Where Do I Hide? It's a Nickelback song. It's just not one that I think anyone would really point to when they discuss the band's best work.
No.
Yeah.
Fair point.
Fun bit of rock. It's harmless. It's not terrible by any means. I think it's just a little bit on the bland side.
Again, yeah, super bland. But you can get by, just not much substance to it. All right. Hangnail versus Higher. Let's just get Hangnail out of the way immediately, just because we know where the points, I think, going to go. Let's talk about Hangnail.
I love Hangnail. I think Hangnail's probably the best track on the second half of the record. Not just that, but Nickelback actually played it live on the recent tour I saw them on last year, and I lost my mind. It was a cut that I did not expect to hear. And it's a great song. It's a really rockin' track. The opening riff's good to it as well, like quite good. It captures your attention very quickly. And just a lot of energy on this one. I really like this song. It goes quite hard. It's one of the best of the record for me. Where are you guys feeling on that track?
Most
On
forgettable.
Hang Now?
Really?
My
Most
first
forgettable.
note is it feels extremely skippable.
Wow.
It's there. It feels throwaway as anything.
Interesting. Do we all agree that Higher is a better song?
I think so.
Oh,
I think we
Higher.
should,
Talk about
let's-
uplifting.
let's go
Oh,
there then.
it certainly is. I have mentioned it. It's been mentioned on the podcast. I'm a big fan of both these bands, and I'm also the guy when he goes shopping to the supermarket to buy chips, he buys chicken souvlaki flavor. So maybe my taste shouldn't be taken too much into consideration. But with that said, I think Higher is just a tremendous piece of what the 90s was all about. It was a bit of fun. It was a bit crazy, but also one thing that this track does incredibly well is it showcases Mark Tremonti's flair on the guitar, because Mark was actually a massive fan of 80s and 90s thrash metal, which you'd never know listening to Creed. But he definitely wanted to be a band that was relevant at the time. But there's really nice little licks that come in throughout the chorus. The light chords, which very nice throughout the song. I think the vocals match beautifully with the drum line and the bass. The bass is doing nice little flourishes here and there. I quite like it, but this track does not fully come together unless we talk about the film clip. Gentlemen, one of the best frames of music video history is right here for you to enjoy.
Oh boy! For reference, Ben has sent something to both of us, and
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah,
is
so
that from the video?
that is from the music video. That is the closing part of the chorus when Scott literally does a Jesus Christ dive into the crowd. One thing this clip does so well is it loves using these freeze frames, and then the camera will pan around and the whole band's frozen. And maybe it's incredibly dated technique, but I kind of want music videos to bring this back. I think it just looks so funny and so silly, but I love it. I'm really happy to say I've seen this music video numerous times at many bowling alleys over the year, and that seems to be where Creed's career is these days, just being played at bowling alleys that haven't updated their PA system in about 15 years. But yeah, that was kind of a precursor to me getting back into Creed. That this clip was playing at a bowling alley, and friend Simon goes, "Hey, are you into Creed?" And I said, "I never really listened to them." And then a week later, at the op shop, it must have been fate. It must have been Human Clay.
Loving the pun. I'm gonna shock you out of your shoes, Ben. Higher confuses me. I do not get why this song was as big as it was.
Do you think though it just sounds iconic? Like it sounds
anthemic. I'm not going to deny that.
There's to me, I listen to this and I go, "There's no way this wasn't going to take off." Like it just everything about it. It's got so much character to it.
Oh, my original counterpoint was going to be, I wish "Are You Ready" was a single than Higher, but in fairness, I think subsequently "Are You Ready" did become a single later on. But songs like "Faceless Man" or maybe a "What If," I'd take that over Higher any other day.
Are You Ready was the fourth single and the final single. So we had Higher, which came out August 24th, 99. What If, Jan 31st, 2000. With Arms Wide Open, which is really bizarre that was the third single, but it ended up being the biggest one of the band's career. And Are You Ready not long after that. Jacob, I really, really appreciated the fact that classic piece of rock history of How You Remind Me really kind of went down well with you. How did Higher go?
I don't know how to feel. I'm with Jason. This song baffles me. I love it, but it also baffles me because I think the verses are perfect Creed. The build-up is perfect Creed. The chorus is extremely disappointing. And that's not saying that the chorus is bad. This is why I don't get this song, because it builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and then you get a chorus that doesn't go anywhere.
I'm not going to go that far to agree with you on that one, Jacob. I can understand it. It does build, but I just see it as a piece of comedy again. It's just funny.
Yeah, I don't see as with Arms Wide Open as much as comedy as I see Higher, but Higher, yeah. It's for me, it's the "Let's Go There." Like this song, it's just I don't know. This is the meme song for me.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, Ben, instrumentally, that little twiddly bit by Tremonti in the chorus, can you take me higher? Yeah, that's not bad. That's
higher
nice.
song, yeah.
Yeah, it's fun because what I like is they're not double taping any of the guitar work. The riff stops when he does that. It's all in one take. It feels raw. It feels live. It feels real. And oh man, this song for me, it's actually good. I don't hear this song in shopping centers anymore because I would be air guitaring so hard. Like that chorus gets me so amped. It's fun stuff. I can't get enough of it. This track to me is perfect, Creed. And the song's all about lucid dreaming, in case those were wondering.
Well, it is a dreamy sounding song.
Definitely. No, it's this is good. I think the next one that follows this really has something important to say. And it's probably the next track kind of reminds me a bit more of Faceless Man, but we'll get into that in a second. Where are we going with our scores?
It has to be higher. I don't mind. I was gonna say I don't mind Hangnail, but I don't think about Hangnail. Whereas higher, every now and then I'll get that like feeling where it's I need to do the Scott Stapp voice.
Yep.
And it's this song that I go for just because of the "Can you take me higher?"
It's so baritone. I like that, Jacob.
Can we also compliment the intro? I think, and then when the snare kicks in again, I complimented how beautiful that snare sounds. But I love that, and then it's just distortion all over your ears and fun stuff.
Good times had by all. For the exact same reasons Jacob has said, I'm going to take higher with him. Ben, where are your points lying?
Oh, higher all the way. It's probably the track that really got me into Creed. I love it.
Yeah, well, we had to get a final answer somehow. A score update just as we head into the final phase of this battle. For myself, Creed is well in the lead, 7-2. Ben, Creed has started pulling away, 6-3. Jacob, it is still tight, and it is still all to play for, 5-4 with Human Clay.
Interesting. It's really disappointing going into the next couple because I know where my points are going, and yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a washout from my perspective so far, unless you guys can sway me.
Okay, let's take it in now. The gold star rule is going to kick in at the end of this battle, but this is the final head-to-head. Good Times Gone, the final track of Silver Side Up, versus Wash Away Those Years, it says here. I was a bit surprised when you said tears, but I think it is years. Wash Away Those Years by Creed, Human Clay, the penultimate track. Also the longest song off Human Clay.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought the word tears is in that chorus. I'm pretty certain.
Right. It's good alliteration, in fairness.
Yeah, it's yeah. Would you like me to open this one up? Let's give that a try.
Go ahead.
Wash Away Those Years is, I think, I'm guessing you guys probably were able to work this out. It's about a woman who had been wronged, abused sexually, and trying to kind of get through that on the other side and kind of coming to terms with what's happened. And I think for the most part, Scott Stapp actually does a pretty good job at being able to sound quite sincere in this. To me, he's not like, it does sound as if he really is moved by this story and he does care about what's happened, and he's kind of trying to console and offer some insight into how to kind of move forward with it. The instrumental, I think here is again, it's classic Mark, it's Tremonti, it's nice and light guitar, very melodic, great melody as always. It's what this band does quite well. And I really, really love, similar to what With Arms Wide Open do, where he'll hit that open light chord and then the drums will kick in and then Scott will just soar. Yeah, I just really, really like what they've done with this one. I'm curious on if this track kind of worked for you guys at all.
It works amazingly for me. This is to me, like in my notes before I did any sort of research to see the meanings or like what it represented. First couple notes I have is the song sounds somber, lonely, and sad, which, given the context, is honestly a better approach than I think Nickelback would have taken, given the rest of this album, for any sort of sad point. And I think just the way it stays very soft for quite a while, it almost does what Faceless Man did, but in a different way, which is, as I said earlier, it's what I want from Creed. It's that formula that it is a very, very good formula. It's just you have to alterate on that and actually change that up. And this does it quite well. There's more of a twangy sound in the guitar this time. That guitar follows Stat, because it's Stat will go duh 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 through the verses, and the guitar will also go duh 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 duh. And it's simple. It's unbelievably simple during that start. When it builds like it did for Faceless Man, just a little bit, just enough. Doesn't transition, into this heavier piece or anything like that. It just stays at, again, a ballady rock. It stays there, which this song reminds me a lot of one of my favorite songs from Alter Bridge, unsurprisingly, in Loving Memory. There is a lot of similarities to me with how this transitions into the heavier parts. So for me, this is exactly what I want from a rock ballad.
I love the lyrics of the chorus. I think are worth shouting out. Well, I guess she closed her eyes and just imagined everything's all right, but she could not hide her tears because they were sent to wash away those years. They were sent to wash away those years. Jason, how did you fare listening to both these songs?
My points go into Good Times Gone.
Fair to say, actually, that track is a lot better than I remember it being. I think Nickelback actually did pretty well on that one. It's a little bit over 5 minutes. The instrumentation on it is a lot more interesting than definitely the previous tracks that we're listening to. It kind of feels as if they threw a few extra things at it. But did you, again, get that kind of carnival vibe from it? I'm not talking about the band Carnival, like a carny kind of...
In Good Times Gone?
Yeah. At least I did. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
Maybe you might agree with me a little bit more here, but my vibe with it was I could picture this being like the soundtrack to a cowboy movie. Like as they've got the camera sweeping through this dusty town.
That's probably a better comparison.
This is what's playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, something out of a Western film. Clint Eastwood riding into the small town.
And it's good. I think...
Oh,
this is a sad one.
Something different. An acoustic guitar. Amazingly, it's something different. It's a breath of fresh air. From Too Bad to Hang Now, it all starts the same way. Good Times Gone kicks in, got a bit of twang to it, and it's like, something different.
Yeah, I think that's something Nickelback started to do a lot better at, was just changing up how they dynamics and how they use different songs. I mean, perfect example. We go to the next record. Someday opens up with an acoustic guitar. That's the third track on that record. They just started to get better at it. I also think this comparison for me would have been so fascinating if it was The Long Road versus Human Clay. I do wonder how that would have gone. Be fascinating to know. But we can only choose one at this point, and we're 10 tracks in. We've reached the final track of the Nickelback record.
Yeah.
What are we going with?
I've just said Good Times Gone for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say Wash Away Those Years in a Landslide for me. I love that track.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. Wash Away Those Years it's so good.
Good stuff.
Okay, now the final song goes uncontested. It's on Human Clay. It is Inside Us All. So the way we give this a gold star, if this went up against any other track on Silver Side Up, or if you would personally seek this song out again, give it a bonus point. Does it warrant it?
You know what? For what I believe is a pretty enjoyable record from start to finish, I think Inside Us All is actually a bit of a dud closer.
Really?
They kind of try to make it sound really epic, but I feel as if it's just a little bit too drawn out for my liking. And yeah, it just doesn't quite get there. Whereas on the previous album, My Own Prison, they end with a track called One, and that's an excellent song. I actually think that track kind of closes that album beautifully. But here was never huge on Inside Us All. It's not one of my favorites.
Interesting. I personally love the melancholy, soft again, to use the same word, somber feel that this song has. The drums are simple, the guitar is great. Stapp kills it on vocals here. It has a dry, soft sound. Again, it has that softer, I guess, formula that Creed has that I like, but it uses that really, really, really well. And this one, it does feel quite different because when it picks up, it doesn't really go much further than where it picks up. And the bridge, I love it. This might be the third favorite. This is one of my favorites off this album. It baffles me that this is the last song on the album. This should have been somewhere in the middle as almost a palate cleanser somewhere, because this is really good.
On that note, Jacob, sometimes a lot of bands put the best track of the record at the end because it's the last thing you get to hear and you go, wow, was that amazing? So perhaps they thought they had something pretty special with that song and they put it at the end of the record. They thought it, just kind of came to a nice conclusion on a high note, if you will.
I do agree that I'm not going to say it's the best. I don't think it is the best. I think that goes to probably Faceless Man, but this is close and I can definitely see that argument behind it. This, to me, gets a gold star without any sort of thought behind it.
Ben, warrant the same things. I'm not. Would I call it a dud? Why would you call that one a dud? Because I can see that point. It's not the greatest ending in the world.
I don't think the chorus is overly interesting, and I feel even with the verse passages as well. To me, it's just not done as well as a lot of the other songs on here. Kind of just goes by, but there's nothing overly striking about it compared to other songs, in my opinion.
And just feels, I also feel sonically it's very weighed down. It's very lumbers along.
It's a bit slow, and it goes for 5 minutes 39. I think you probably could have shortened it by 2 minutes even, this one. Some songs definitely warrant the length, but Inside Us All just probably didn't need to overstay its welcome so much on an album that was almost clocking in an hour. 56 minutes, 28 seconds.
But to its credit, I'll say to its credit, there's some interesting solo work going on. Like, we didn't have an outright solo, but there's a problem I have with it because it builds it up. It builds up to an interesting climax. It's like it's going to climax and then it just fades out.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, now that we know how good Mark Tremonti is, like, we know how good he is now. But I guess in 1999 it would have been a bit of a different perspective to that. But it's just something missing about that.
For those who like Alter Bridge, I think it's pretty interesting to note, and it's no surprise, my favorite album from Alter Bridge is One Day Remains because it's easily the closest they ever sounded to Creed. There's some tracks on that record that are just Creed, in my opinion. Find the Real, Broken Wings is a Creed song. I mean, it sounds like a Creed song to me. I could imagine him singing that. But then there's other classics that sound nothing like Creed. Metalingus, I think, is a really good example of that. Anyway, it's a fun record, but the band were quite annoyed about it because they were on Wind Up Records, same as with Creed, Wind Up. And Wind Up did the marketing as this is featuring 3 members of Creed, and the band were actually annoyed because they didn't want that name with anything to do with this new project, which is rightfully so because people would look at it a certain way. So yeah, they were pretty frustrated about that, but their career went fine, so they got nothing to worry about. But yeah, really, really great that we got to dive into these records. Jason, where's your head at? And Jacob, I have to ask, do you guys look at Creed and Nickelback a little bit differently than before, or after listening to these records, did nothing change your mind whatsoever about either of these bands?
I think for me, I come out of this with a bit more of a respect for what Creed could have been, in saying that they did evolve into essentially Alter Bridge. So what they could have been was very, very good. And what they did become was very, very good for that matter. But I think I walk out of this with the opposite mindset for Nickelback, because this is... it's been so long since I've gone back to Silver Side Up and listened to everything. And listening to it all together, I understand why people got so sick of the album and so sick of Nickelback throughout the years, because the next album, yeah, they do change a bit, but there's only 3 or 4 songs I can think of that actually change at all. Even with Dark Horse, a lot of the songs are very similar to this. And it's kind of just looking back and going, yeah, they needed to change. I understand very much so why people hated them.
Yeah, I think the difference is it's also a reason why Creed is just completely lost out of any sense of relevance, especially in 2020. I know people don't like them, and they had a formula, and it wasn't to everyone's cup of tea. But they actually went away. They only did make 4 albums, which is not many in the scheme of things. Whereas Nickelback, I think, have made 9 now. And considering they have not changed the formula really since Silver Side Up, it's kind of been a pretty similar deal. I think they got better at songwriting in the next few records that followed Silver Side Up. But yeah, it's just a lot. So
let me put it this way. I could see Edge of a Revolution on Silver Side Up. If that was on this album, I would not be surprised. I don't think it would feel too out of place.
Yeah. I think you could take quite a lot of different cuts from later records and it would still probably fit in pretty easily. So it's interesting.
I would just still implore listeners to at least give the song Feed the Machine a chance, because that song's stellar.
That was classic. First single they released off that newest album, and people went, oh my gosh, it's finally the heavy metal album we've all been waiting for the band to do, and then it just wasn't.
Well, I didn't explore the entire album, so thank you for the feedback there, Ben.
No worries at all.
In conclusion, for me, Creed, I still think they're funny. I still think Scott Stapp is the most nasally human being I've ever met. And another thing that really, really bugs me about this is that obviously the backing band of Creed are really good because they went on to form Alter Bridge and they're brilliant. Scott Stapp, if you listen to some of his solo stuff, like if you listen to some songs off that recent one called The Space Between the Shadows, the song Purpose for Pain, the song Survivor, the nasal singing style is almost non-existent.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. No. Yeah. Even on the Creed reunion record from 2009, his voice sounds completely different. The nasal, it's gone. I do agree. I don't know what happened there.
Would you recommend me listening to Full Circle? I haven't actually done that yet.
You know what? I would, because a lot of it does just sound like Alter Bridge songs. It's heavier. If you try the opening track, oh my gosh, I can't even think of what it's called. But the opening track is really, really brilliant, and it's worth a listen. And a track called Bread of Shame. Oh, Overcome's the opening track, but the track Bread of Shame that follows it is really heavy too. Like for Creed, it's like, wow, it's really heavy. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll seek that one out. All right, well, we're at the end of the battle, and it is time to put all of our tally scores into grand points. And this one, it's not going to be that much of a climactic ending, because for all of us, and I mean all 3 of us, we've all scored 7 tally points to Human Clay. So in a landslide, it's 3-0 to Human Clay, and it wins.
I'm really, really happy, boys. I think the best album of the 2 did come to the surface. I think we all worked it out. So really, really proud of you guys to give those 2 albums a listen. I know it wasn't quite number 1 thing to do on the lead up to Christmas, but you got through it and you listened to them a couple of times. And if anything, I think you could probably see the appeal for a lot of fans for these bands, but then I think you can also sit in the camp of the naysayers that don't like them as well. So
you can understand the fact that even, like, for example, Nickelback, obviously didn't register any grand points, and for example, all of our overall scores is 7-3 or 7-4. But even the songs that we don't like by Silver Side Up, in fairness, if they're on in the background on a night out, you will end up toe tapping, like, subconsciously. So you can kind of make sense of that. But at the same time, it just, for me, there wasn't much memorable about it.
Yeah, there's nothing actively bad.
Yeah, this is why the Nickelback and the Creed hate was always so baffling to me, because I don't think any of their music is offensively bad. To the point of like that is just such a bad composition or whatever. I mean, you could nod to it if it's in the background. It's a bit of fun.
There is one offensively bad, Ben.
Yep.
Look at this photograph.
Oh,
Every time I do, it makes me laugh.
love. So good. Stay tuned for the Great Metal Standoff that'll come in next year when I talk about Photograph for 3 hours. I break down how the song came to be. What did Joey have on his head? All that kind of stuff. No, I'm not
What
going to be
did
doing
he have?
that.
Good
Oh
idea.
boy.
Maybe we should do a Nickelback Creed rematch, or we should do like a rematch, I reckon, at some point later down the line. How's that sound?
Yeah, if I could
fun.
say, I think the most fair one we could do would be The Long Road versus Weathered, which are both the band's third records each. And I think especially Weathered for Creed has the best variety the band ever had on studio record.
Well, if the listeners want it, we'll give it to them. Ben and Jacob, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks so much, Jason. Always a joy. And Jacob, very much appreciate how respectful you were, considering these were not two of your absolute favorite bands on the planet of the Earth. And Jason, you too.
Thanks for having me, man. It was, as much as it wasn't my favorite listen, it was a fun listen.
I can reveal that this result is the first battle to have our panel pitch a shutout. Creed Human Clay handily defeats Nickelback Silver Cider, thus earning the crown of least worst. Alright, admittedly, there are worse bands out there in the world than Creed. Big thanks to Jacob and Ben for pleading their cases on the show, for it has made the last podcast of 2020 end with at least some fun and laughs to help this horror year help put it behind us. 'Tis the season to take the time to spend the holidays with our loved ones, reflect on the year gone by, and look to a better future. And to anyone out there listening who has been doing it tough this holiday season, from all of us here at the Great Metal Standoff, Mosh Pit, and Sin, better days are ahead and things will get better. We wish you a very, very happy holidays. It has been great fun talking music with all of you. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in, voted in a poll, or come on as a guest. You have helped make this show the most rewarding part of my year. Facebook.com/Metal Standoff Pod if you want to stick with us going forward in the coming year. We hope to hear from you then. But for now, take care, happy holidays, and a happy new year. And, of course, metal up your ass!